I never imagined my life could change so dramatically in such a short time. My name is Emily, I'm 26 years old, and until recently, I was just an ordinary manager at a clothing store in downtown Chicago. My routine was simple: wake up early, go to work, deal with customers and employees, and return home at night. But everything changed when I met Jack and Mike. It was a night like any other. I was closing the store, exhausted after a long day of work. The streets were darker and emptier than usual, and I felt a little apprehensive as I walked to the bus stop. That's when I saw a police cruiser slowly approaching. The passenger window rolled down, and a friendly face appeared. "Good evening, miss. Is everything all right? Do you need a ride?" asked the police officer with a captivating smile. I hesitated for a moment, but something in his tone of voice made me feel safe. "Good evening, officer." I think so, thank you," I replied, a little uncertain. "Great. I'm Jack, and this is my partner, Mike," he said, pointing to the officer driving, who just nodded silently. I got into the car, and so began a series of events that would change my life forever. In the weeks that followed, it became a sort of routine. Jack and Mike would show up almost every night to give me a ride after work. Jack was always talkative and charismatic, telling funny stories about their work and asking questions about my life. Mike, on the other hand, was more reserved, speaking only when necessary. Over time, I began to feel more and more attracted to Jack. His easy smile, his relaxed way of speaking, everything about him seemed to captivate me. I knew he was married, he mentioned his wife from time to time, but that didn't stop my heart from racing every time I saw him. One night, after almost 2 months of this new routine, Jack invited me for coffee after my shift. "Just the two of us," he said with a smile that made my legs tremble. I knew I shouldn't, but I accepted. The coffee was wonderful. We talked for hours, laughing and sharing stories. When he drove me home, there was a moment of tension in the car. Our eyes met, and for a second, I thought he was going to kiss me. But he just smiled and said goodnight. In the weeks that followed, these casual encounters became more frequent. Sometimes it was coffee, other times a quick lunch. Always with the excuse that it was just a friendship between colleagues. But I knew, deep in my heart, that I was falling in love with a married man. Mike, who usually stayed quiet during our rides, started giving concerned looks in my direction. One night, when Jack wasn't in the car, he finally spoke up. "Emily, be careful," he said in a low voice. "Jack isn't who you think he is." I was shocked by his words. "What do you mean?" Mike sighed deeply. "He has a history. He's been involved with other women we were supposedly protecting. I don't want to see you get hurt." I didn't want to believe it. Jack had been so kind, so attentive. How could he be the man Mike was describing? But a seed of doubt was planted in my mind. A few days later, Mike contacted me, asking to meet in private. Reluctantly, I agreed. He took me to a small apartment in the city center, which seemed to be some kind of hideout. "I need to show you something," he said, turning on a laptop. What I saw on the screen left me breathless. It was security camera footage, dated just a week ago. It showed Jack in a bar, passionately kissing a woman who was definitely not his wife. And it wasn't me either. "Who is she?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Amanda," Mike answered softly. "Another woman he met during work." "Emily, I'm sorry, but you need to know the truth." My world crumbled at that moment. All the whispered promises, all the loving looks, everything seemed like a lie now. I felt used, betrayed, and infinitely foolish. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked through tears. Mike put a comforting hand on my shoulder. Because you deserve to know the truth. And because I care about you, Emily. I can't stand by and watch Jack hurt another innocent person. That night, I cried myself to sleep. But when I woke up the next morning, I felt a determination I had never experienced before. I would no longer be a victim. I decided to report Jack to the proper authorities. The process was long and painful. I had to relive every moment, every conversation, every look. But Mike was by my side every step of the way. He wasn't just my witness, but became my support, my confidant. As the investigation progressed, Mike and I spent more time together. We discovered we had a lot in common beyond that complicated situation. We both loved photography, and we spent several weekends exploring the city with our cameras. He taught me about composition and light, while I introduced him to the world of fashion photography. We also discovered a shared passion for cooking. We spent entire nights experimenting with exotic recipes, laughing at our culinary failures and savoring our successes. It was during one of these nights, with flour on our faces and the smell of a burnt cake in the oven, that Mike began to open up about his past. I lost my brother in a traffic accident when I was a teenager, he told me, his eyes fixed on the batter he was stirring. That's why I decided to become a police officer. I wanted to make a difference, you know. Prevent other families from going through what mine did. I felt my heart tighten at his words. I'm so sorry, Mike. It must have been terrible. He nodded, a sad smile playing on his lips. It was. But it made me who I am today. What about you, Emily? What brought you here? I took a deep breath, feeling it was my turn to share. I've always been passionate about fashion. I started working at the store as a sales associate when I was still in college and ended up staying. But I guess I've always been afraid to take risks, you know. To really pursue my dreams. And what are those dreams? Mike asked, his eyes meeting mine. To have my own store one day. To create my own pieces. I laughed nervously. Sounds silly, doesn't it? Mike put down the spoon and turned to me, his eyes serious. It's not silly at all, Emily. It's an incredible dream. And I'm sure you'll achieve it one day. At that moment, I felt something change between us. It wasn't just about comfort or friendship anymore. There was something more, something deep and scary in its intensity. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The investigation against Jack continued, revealing a pattern of behavior that went far beyond what I could have imagined. Other women started coming forward, telling stories similar to mine. Each new testimony was like a knife in my heart, but it also strengthened my resolve. Mike was there for me in every difficult moment. He held my hand during the toughest testimonies, brought me coffee when work nights stretched on, and made me laugh when everything seemed too dark. It was during one of these endless work nights that I realized I was falling in love with him. It wasn't the overwhelming and dangerous passion I felt for Jack. It was something calmer, deeper. It was like coming home after a long trip. But I was afraid. Afraid of getting hurt again, afraid of trusting. And above all, afraid of ruining the precious friendship we had built. Mike, always perceptive, must have noticed my hesitation. One afternoon, while we were reviewing some documents, he placed his hand over mine. Emily, he said softly, I know you're scared. I am too. But I think we have something special here. Something worth exploring. If you want to, of course. I looked into his eyes and saw everything I needed to see there. Honesty, care, and yes, love. Slowly, almost without realizing it, I leaned towards him. Our lips met in a soft kiss, full of promises. From that moment on, our relationship blossomed. It wasn't easy, of course. We had to face public scrutiny, curious looks at work, whispers in the corridors. But we faced everything together. To avoid conflicts of interest, Mike transferred to another police unit. It was a difficult decision, but necessary. I continued at the store, but with a new perspective. I started taking fashion design courses at night, determined not to let my dreams die. The investigation against Jack finally came to an end. The evidence was overwhelming. He was found guilty of misconduct, abuse of power, and sexual harassment. He was dismissed from the police force and sentenced to prison time. Seeing Jack being led away in handcuffs was a bittersweet moment for me. Part of me still remembered the charming man who made me feel special. But that part was getting smaller, overshadowed by the reality of who he really was. Mike and I decided to use our experience for something positive. We started giving talks about professional ethics and the dangers of abuse of power. At first, it was scary to share our story, but we soon realized the impact we were having. People would come to thank us, share their own stories, seek advice. A year after the start of our relationship, Mike proposed to me. It was during a picnic in a park, the same place where we had taken our first photos together. He got down on one knee, presented me with a simple but beautiful ring, and said the most beautiful words I've ever heard. "Emily, you taught me the true meaning of courage and resilience. You turned a terrible situation into something beautiful. I want to spend the rest of my life by your side, supporting your dreams, sharing laughs and facing any challenge that life throws at us. Will you marry me?" Through tears of joy, I said yes. Our wedding was a celebration of love and new beginnings. We decided on an intimate ceremony, just family and close friends. I wore a dress that I designed myself, the realization of a dream that had long been dormant. After the wedding, things started to change quickly. I finally gathered the courage to leave my job at the store and open my own boutique. It was scary at first, but Mike was there to support me every step of the way. The store, which I named Renaissance, was small but welcoming. I started by selling pieces from other local designers, but soon began to include my own creations. To my surprise and joy, they were well received. Customers started requesting custom pieces, and soon I found myself working on my first full collection. Mike, inspired by our journey, decided to go back to school. He enrolled in a night law course, determined to become a defense attorney. His experiences as a police officer, combined with what we had been through together, motivated him to want to make a difference in a new way. Our nights were full now. While I designed and sewed, Mike studied, our dreams intertwining like the threads in my creations. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, I would find him asleep over his law books, and gently guide him to bed, grateful to have found such a dedicated partner. 2 years after our wedding, we received the most wonderful news: we were expecting a baby. The pregnancy was a mix of joy and anxiety. We spent months preparing the baby's room, choosing colors, assembling furniture, and imagining what our life would be like as parents. When our daughter, Olivia, was born, it was as if the world had stopped. Looking at that little face, so perfect and innocent, I felt a wave of love that I had never experienced before. Mike cried when he held her for the first time, and at that moment, I knew we had created something truly special. The first few months with Olivia were a roller coaster. Sleepless nights, endless diapers, and the constant worry if we were doing everything right. But they were also full of magical moments: Olivia's first smile, her first laugh, the first time she held my finger with her tiny hand. Mike proved to be a wonderful father. He spent hours singing to Olivia, telling stories, and making faces to make her laugh. Seeing him with our daughter made me love him even more, if that was possible. Balancing motherhood with my work at the boutique was a challenge, but one I embraced with enthusiasm. I started creating a line of children's clothes, inspired by Olivia. The pieces were colorful, comfortable and practical, reflecting everything I had learned about the real needs of mothers and babies. The children's line was an unexpected success. Mothers started coming from all over the city to buy my creations. Soon, I received orders from larger stores wanting to resell my pieces. It was exciting and scary at the same time. Mike, meanwhile, was progressing in his law studies. He spent his days working in the police force and his nights studying. Sometimes, I would find him asleep at the kitchen table, surrounded by law books. In those moments, I would gently wake him up, guiding him to bed, grateful to have such a dedicated partner. As Olivia grew, our life found a new rhythm. Mornings were filled with laughter and play before Mike left for work. I spent my days divided between taking care of Olivia and managing the boutique, which now had a small team of employees. The evenings were ours, a precious family time. It was during this period that I received surprising news. Jack was being released from prison. He had served his sentence and was being released for good behavior. The news hit me like a punch in the stomach. Mike immediately noticed my distress. "It's okay, love," he assured me, wrapping me in his arms. "He can't hurt us anymore. We're stronger now." I knew he was right, but still, I felt a familiar fear settle in my chest. What if Jack tried to contact us? What if he wanted revenge? But the days passed and nothing happened. Jack didn't try to contact us, and gradually, the fear diminished. I realized he no longer had power over me. I had moved on, built a wonderful life, and he was just a distant memory of a painful, but closed, chapter of my life. As Olivia approached her second birthday, Mike and I began to discuss the possibility of having another child. The idea scared me a little. Our lives were already so busy and full, but it also filled me with excitement. Olivia was such a wonderful child, and the idea of giving her a little brother or sister was tempting. It was around this time that I received an unexpected invitation. A local fashion magazine wanted to do a feature on my boutique and my children's clothing line. At first, I was hesitant. Exposing myself publicly still made me a little nervous, a reminder of the difficult days of the investigation against Jack. But Mike encouraged me. "You've built something amazing, Emily," he said. "It's time to share your story with the world. Who knows how many people you can inspire." I decided to accept the invitation. The interview was scheduled for a sunny Thursday afternoon. The journalist, a friendly woman named Sarah, arrived punctually at the boutique. She was enchanted with the clothes and the welcoming environment I had created. As the interview progressed, I found myself sharing not just about my current work, but also about my journey. I talked about the difficult days working in the department store, about how I almost gave up on my dreams. And, with a lump in my throat, I talked about Jack and how that painful experience ended up leading me to Mike and the life I had now. Sarah listened attentively, her eyes filling with tears at times. When I finished my story, she held my hand and said, "Emily, you're an inspiration. Your resilience, your courage, people need to hear this story." The article was published 2 weeks later. Seeing my story in print, accompanied by photos of the boutique and my creations, was surreal. But nothing prepared me for the response I received. In the days following the publication, the boutique was flooded with customers. Women came not just to buy clothes, but to share their own stories of overcoming. I received dozens of emails from people thanking me for sharing my journey, saying how it had inspired them to pursue their own dreams. One afternoon, a young woman entered the store. Her eyes were red and puffy, as if she had been crying recently. She approached the counter timidly. "Are you Emily?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. I nodded, feeling a pang of concern. "Yes, I am. Can I help you?" The woman took a deep breath before speaking. "My name is Amanda. I was one of the other women involved with Jack. I felt my heart stop for a moment. Amanda. The woman from the video Mike had shown me years ago. She continued speaking, the words coming out in a torrent. I read your interview in the magazine. Your story, it's so similar to mine. I felt so alone, so ashamed for so long. But reading about how you overcame everything, how you built this incredible life, it gave me hope for the first time in years. Tears were now streaming down Amanda's face, and I felt my own eyes fill with water. Without thinking twice, I came around the counter and hugged her. We stayed like that for a long moment, two women united by a shared experience of pain and, now, healing. When we separated, I wiped my tears and smiled at Amanda. You're not alone, I told her. And you can overcome this too. If I could do it, you can too. I spent the next hour talking with Amanda, listening to her story, offering words of comfort and encouragement. When she finally left the store, she seemed lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. That night, lying in bed next to Mike, I shared what had happened. He listened attentively, his eyes full of love and pride. You see, he said softly. You've turned something terrible into something beautiful. You're helping people, Emily. You're making a difference. His words hit me deeply. For the first time, I fully realized how much I had grown, how much I had overcome. I was no longer that naive and scared young woman who got into the police car years ago. I was a strong woman, a successful businesswoman, a wife, a mother. And now, perhaps, a beacon of hope for other women who were going through what I had experienced. The following months were a whirlwind. The boutique continued to grow, and I found myself expanding to a larger store. Mike graduated from law school with honors and started working at a law firm specializing in cases of abuse of power and sexual harassment. Olivia was growing fast, becoming a curious and energetic little girl. Her laughter filled our house with joy, constantly reminding us of how blessed we were. And then, on a sunny spring morning, we discovered that our family was about to grow again. The pregnancy was met with joy and a little apprehension. After all, our lives were already quite busy. But we were ready for this new chapter. 9 months later, we welcomed our son, Ethan. Holding that tiny bundle in my arms, with Mike by my side and Olivia eager to meet her new baby brother, I felt a wave of gratitude so intense it almost took my breath away. I looked at Mike, his eyes shining with tears of joy. Who would have thought, I whispered, that terrible night years ago would lead us to this? He smiled, leaning in to kiss my forehead. Sometimes, the bad things in life lead us to the best places, he replied softly. And there, in that hospital room, surrounded by my family, I knew he was right. My journey had been long and at times painful. There were moments when I thought I couldn't go on. But each step, each obstacle, led me exactly where I needed to be. I had transformed my pain into strength, my fear into courage. I had built a life that went beyond my wildest dreams. And most importantly, I had found true and honest love, not just in Mike, but in myself. As I held Ethan in my arms, with Olivia snuggling up next to me and Mike enveloping us in a protective embrace, I knew, with absolute certainty, that it had all been worth it. Every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt, it all brought me to this perfect moment. And I wouldn't change a thing. My story of betrayal and redemption had come to an end, but my journey was far from over. With my family by my side, I was ready to face any challenge the future might bring. Because now I knew the truth, no matter how dark the night may seem, dawn always comes. And with it, the promise of a new day, full of endless possibilities. Looking back at the scared young woman I was when this whole journey began, I want to tell her, be strong. Trust yourself. The path may be difficult, but it's worth it. You are stronger than you imagine, braver than you believe. And one day, you'll look back and see that every step, every tear, every moment of doubt, led you exactly where you need to be. And to all the Emilies out there, facing their own battles, dealing with their own betrayals, I say, don't give up. You are not alone. There is light at the end of the tunnel, even when you can't see it. Keep walking, keep fighting. Your redemption story is waiting to be written. Because in the end, it's not about how we fall. It's about how we get up, dust ourselves off, and keep moving forward. It's about turning our scars into stars that guide us towards a better future. And that's what I intend to keep doing, every day of my life. Not just for myself, but for Mike, for Olivia, for Ethan, and for all the other people our story might touch and inspire. Because each of us has the power to transform our story of betrayal into a story of triumph. All we need is the courage to take the first step. And believe me, it's worth every second of the journey. As the years passed, our family continued to grow and thrive. Olivia blossomed into a creative and compassionate young girl, with a talent for art that never ceased to amaze us. Ethan, with his mischievous smile and boundless energy, kept us on our toes and filled our days with laughter. The boutique, now a well-established name in the local fashion scene, allowed me to pursue my passion while also providing for my family. I expanded the children's line and even started a small collection for expectant mothers, inspired by my own experiences. The work was challenging, but deeply fulfilling. Mike's career as a defense attorney took off. He became known for his unwavering commitment to justice and his compassion for his clients. Many of the cases he took on were pro bono, helping those who couldn't afford legal representation. Watching him fight for others, seeing the fire in his eyes when he talked about his work, made me fall in love with him all over again every day. Our life wasn't perfect, no life ever is, but it was beautiful in its imperfection. We had our arguments, our moments of frustration and exhaustion. There were times when the memories of the past would creep up unexpectedly, casting a temporary shadow. But we faced each challenge together, our bond growing stronger with each obstacle overcome. One day, as I was closing up the boutique, a familiar face caught my eye. It was Jack, standing across the street, watching me. For a moment, I felt that old fear grip my heart. But as I looked at him, I realized something. I felt nothing. No anger, no fear, no lingering attraction. He was just a man, a stranger really, with no power over me anymore. Our eyes met, and for a long moment, we just looked at each other. Then, without a word, he turned and walked away. I never saw him again after that day. That night, as I recounted the incident to Mike, he held me close. "Are you okay?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. I thought about it for a moment, then smiled. "You know what? I really am." Seeing him, it was like closing a book. A final period at the end of that chapter of my life. Mike kissed my forehead gently. "I'm proud of you, Emily. You've come so far." As I lay in bed that night, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. From the scared, naive girl I once was, to the woman I had become. A woman who had faced her fears, who had rebuilt herself from the ashes of betrayal, who had found the strength to love and trust again. I thought about all the women out there who might be going through similar experiences. Women who felt alone, scared, betrayed. And I made a decision. The next day, I started writing. I poured my story onto the pages, holding nothing back. The fear, the pain, the moments of despair, but also the hope, the healing, the love I had found. It was raw, it was real, and it was mine. Months later, with Mike's encouragement and support, I published my memoir. From Betrayal to Triumph, A Journey of Healing and Hope, it was called. The response was overwhelming. Letters and emails poured in from women and men all over the country, sharing their own stories, thanking me for giving them hope. I started speaking at women's shelters and support groups, sharing my experience and listening to others. It wasn't always easy, reliving those moments could be painful, but the knowledge that I might be helping someone else made it all worthwhile. As Olivia and Ethan grew older, we made sure to instill in them the values that had seen us through our darkest times: honesty, integrity, compassion, and resilience. We taught them that it's okay to make mistakes, that it's how we learn and grow from them that matters. One evening, as we sat around the dinner table, Olivia, now a thoughtful teenager, asked me a question that caught me off guard. "Mom," she said, her eyes serious, "if you could go back and change things, would you? Would you avoid meeting Jack altogether?" I looked at Mike, saw the love and support in his eyes, then turned back to my daughter. "No, sweetheart," I said softly. "I wouldn't change a thing. Because every step of that journey, even the painful ones, led me here. To your father, to you and Ethan, to the life we have. And I wouldn't trade that for anything in the world." Olivia nodded, seeming to understand. Ethan, always the jokester, piped up, "Even if it meant you could have superpowers instead?" We all burst into laughter, the serious moment broken. As I looked around at my family, Mike's kind eyes, Olivia's thoughtful smile, Ethan's mischievous grin, I felt a wave of love and gratitude wash over me. This was my superpower. This love, this family, this life we had built together. It hadn't come easily, but that only made it more precious. As the years continue to pass, I often think about that scared young woman I once was, standing on a dark street, accepting a ride from a stranger. I want to reach out to her, to all the women out there who might be in similar situations, and tell them, your story isn't over. This chapter, no matter how dark it seems, is not the end. You have the strength within you to rewrite your narrative, to turn your pain into power, your fear into courage. It won't be easy, and there will be days when you want to give up. But keep going. Keep fighting. Because on the other side of this struggle is a life more beautiful than you can imagine. You are not defined by what happens to you, but by how you rise above it. You are not a victim, but a survivor. And one day, you'll look back on this moment and realize it was the beginning of your transformation into the strong, resilient, magnificent woman you were always meant to be. Trust in yourself. Believe in your worth. And never, ever give up on your happy ending. Because it's out there, waiting for you. All you have to do is be brave enough to reach for it. As I close this chapter of my life, I do so with a heart full of gratitude, hope, and love. For Mike, my rock and my heart. For Olivia and Ethan, my joy and my inspiration. For every person who has been a part of this journey, whether for a moment or a lifetime. And for you, dear reader, who has taken this journey with me. Remember, your story is still being written. Make it a beautiful one.